Hi, good afternoon. This is Paul Cadman in downtown, in business, in the Den. Obviously, during these unprecedented circumstances, we're all working from home and things like that. Just putting a Zoom call together. It's the charities that are shaping Birmingham. We haven't had the opportunity of including every charity. Obviously, we would like to do that, but we put together 4 leaders of 4 charities. And in no particular order, we have Tim Andrews representing Lovebrum. We have Tina Swani representing St Mary's Hospice, Carly Jones representing Sifa Fireside, and of course, last but not least, Toby Porter representing Acorns Children's Hospice. Toby, if we can just start off with you, if you can take a minute or two, just introduce yourself, and I think pretty much all of the people that are watching now obviously know you, but if you just take a minute or two and just tell us what's been happening over the last few weeks to you, your team and the hospice, please.
Thank you, Paul, and really delighted. Thank you for giving us the platform to talk about the opportunities and the challenges for Brum's charities right now. It's been obviously like a lot of people, I think the crux of the dilemma for charities is that we've been critically concerned about the children and the families that we're supporting at Acorns. We support very poorly children and families, very early to shield, very concerned about what would happen to their children if they caught the coronavirus, etc. So we're seeing a big spike in demand at a time where we've obviously also, from a business perspective, had the biggest shock to the charity business model that you could ever have imagined. With charity shops shut, all business events, corporate donations, a lot of community fundraising down, substantially down, all major events like Sunday's Marathon cancelled, etc. And I think that the heart of the dilemma for leaders and trustees in the charity sector is dealing with a spike in demand and an absolute trough in income, and I would say that has been incredible. I'm sure.
Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction. Tina, do you want to pick up just with an introduction of you and what you've been up to over the last few weeks, and how it's impacted on your team and your charity as a whole, please?
Well, one thing is that this has been a devastating time for people, patients, families, anyone that has a loved one that is ill or nearing the end of life. It is terrible to be separated. So one thing that we've done, and also everything that Toby says, money drying up because we can't do the fundraising that we were doing. But what I am so proud of is the way the adult hospices of Birmingham and Solihull have come together. So Marie Curie, John Taylor, Birmingham St Mary's, we've pulled together to form a one-number service called Hospices of Birmingham and Solihull, so that we recognise that any one of us could end up short-staffed because of staff being right in the thick of coronavirus. We are nursing people who have got COVID-19, whether that's at home or in the hospices. So we wanted to build our own resilience and be there for people at this terrible time. And so we've got one number between us. With community nursing, we've pulled all our nursing staff, medical team, occupational therapists, social workers. We all work as one now from our hub based at John Taylor Hospice. And I'm so proud that we can now provide a service from one number 24/7, 7 days a week. And our phone lines have never been so busy. So we know that it's needed. And it also reassures those that are still supporting us with the virtual events that we're making our money go as far as it possibly can.
Fabulous.
So, amazing work.
Okay. Carly, welcome. Good afternoon. Same questions to you. How are you? How's the staff? And what immediate changes and what's happened over the last few weeks? If you can give us a bit of an update, that would be wonderful, please.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on and for this platform. Like others have said, it's great. I think in terms of Sifa Fireside, the big issue for us really has been that about 4 weeks ago, obviously we had to close our drop-in service, which was seeing about 160 people every day. And the absolute critical shift that we really had to make in terms of the service provision, from people coming to our centrally based location to how do we now support people when they can't come in to access our practical support services like the showers and food and clothing and things like that. And also the fact that even though Birmingham's done a tremendous amount of work in accommodating almost all of our rough sleepers during this period of time, the level of vulnerability that they continue to face and how we address that. So we had to very rapidly transform our model into much more telephone-based support, doing safe and well checks with people. We are still doing some outreach as well. In fact, this morning we actually went out to somebody's makeshift camp because they'd been attacked last night. So the need and the critical vitalness of our services is still very much there. We are retaining a skeleton staff in our building because people are still coming to us in desperate need of help. So it's been a big change, and obviously for the staff, as I'm sure others would echo, they've just had to get on with it and pull their sleeves up, and they've done it absolutely just unbelievably well. And the level of resilience that we're seeing among our staff's team is just outstanding, really. But also, I just wanted to echo what Tina was sort of saying about in terms of the hospice context, but also across the board. I think our reflection would be the level of collaboration that we have seen recently. It's beyond compare, and actually there's been some really rapid system change that has happened in areas where we've been battling these things for quite a long period of time, and now suddenly we have created that change within our systems. And our hope is that there's a bit of a legacy potentially that can be left as a result of this that might be very positive as well.
Excellent. We'll come back to a number of points there that all three of you raised. Tim, good afternoon. Yep. Welcome. As chairman and founder of Lovebrum, you're regarded by me, and correct me if I'm not wrong, as the overarching charity that's sort of supporting many smaller charities, initiatives, incentives throughout the city and wider. Although you love Brum, you do go a little bit further than that and things like that. And there's one of the things that we want to talk about, the One Brum sort of initiative that you're kicking off. But if you just give us a bit of an update of what you've been up to, your team have been up to over the last few weeks, that would be wonderful.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to for this platform. I see the participant numbers clocking up on the screen, so it's good to see. And it's such an interesting and also important time for charities. As you say, we are an umbrella charity. We raise money for smaller organisations, and I think one thing that has struck home to me during this COVID crisis, the huge amount of charitable support for from the community and back to the community. Has been quite amazing. What I would say, and then they deserve every single penny, but a lot of that money has been going to the NHS, and of course there's lots of charities, that are doing equally good work. And as you've just heard, my plea really to really Birmingham and the wider communities, there are still loads, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of charities out there that still need that support. And of course, the COVID situation has really sort of struck home that, and the three people preceding me, their stories, I just can't imagine, well, I can from my business point of view because we're going through similar challenges, but from a charitable point of view, it's really quite heart-wrenching to see that happening here in the city. And God hope, we all get back to normal as quick as possible, and we don't see lots of charities falling by the wayside because they are doing some awesome things.
All being well. Can you talk us about the initiative, the One Brum? What's the mindset behind that? How does that work, and how can we all get involved?
Yeah, well, the driver behind it initially is, we felt that, again, really backing on what I was just saying, there's charities out there that are still doing work, and they still... but there's a collaboration of projects coming together to help families and people that are suffering through the COVID crisis. So hashtag One Brum is all about Birmingham coming together. We were just asking for a £1 donation from the Birmingham public, and then that money will be channeled into projects that are helping families and people suffering through the COVID crisis. We've chosen 4 projects at this moment in time, and basically many people that sort of follow Lovebrum, we do a charity each week, and they're very small. The important thing to remember is they're volunteer-led organisations, they're volunteer projects. So, whilst we're not raising millions of pounds, even £2,000 goes such a long way for the small charities. And you won't believe the sort of the impact. And we are doing some work on that at the moment. We've got some volunteers doing some videos, going back into the causes, doing telephone interviews. So we will be releasing soon the impact that Lovebrum is having. But it is, just summing up really based on what I was just saying, that, the collaboration, and certainly this is a great platform and this demonstrates the collaboration that's going on in the city. But we just want more Birmingham people to get behind the campaign. It's not a lot of money we're asking for, and we appreciate that families are struggling in this time. But we just want to put money into the heart of the city.
So it's simply asking for £1 per person in the city that comes into Lovebrum, that Lovebrum can distribute that as and when needed across the city.
But it's replacing the initial, the weekly fundraise that we do. So we were adapting to the COVID crisis. There's no more better time to really focus and help the families in the Birmingham area that are suffering from COVID-related issues.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's fantastic. We'll definitely come back to you. Toby, just looking at some of the changes that Acorns has made over the last few weeks, you've been very agile, and there's been some updates and things like that, and some of the hospices have been closed and just been used for different purposes and things like that. Can you just give us an update where you are regarding that, please?
Yes, so what we did is we started the plan with, I suppose, 2 overarching objectives, which is how could we continue to support the children and families who depend on Acorns Children's Hospice care at any time. But also, secondly, how could we support the wider NHS emergency response effort? So what we did, we repurposed our Walsall Hospice, the Black Country Hospice, to take some of the poorest children who are long-term residents or stayers in the Birmingham Children's Hospital and other hospitals like Wolverhampton and Walsall in the region. So the idea that by us taking a child who would be in intensive care but stable long-term, free up intensive care capability. And then our Worcester Hospice, we dedicated it to social emergencies, to care for children who meet our medical criteria, but who don't have homes, who aren't able to be at home, perhaps for safeguarding reasons, or perhaps they don't have a home to go for because fostering arrangements have fallen through, or they're not able to live with their parents, etc. And then we also, as Tina would have been as well, one of the things which I could have mentioned in my last answer about one of the things you had to plan on was a far higher than normal sickness absence rate. So we soon realised, it was initially about 20-25%, wasn't it, Tina, at the end of March, in terms of people who were self-isolating on the basic criteria given by the government in terms of. And so we knew that if we tried to keep all our 3 hospices open, we'd probably end up not being able to adequately staff any of them. So we temporarily Birmingham and said, look, if anyone else in the healthcare world in Birmingham, if the QEH are just over the hill, if it needs excess capacity to care for people or to have somewhere for doctors and nurses to sleep, if they're not able to go to their own homes because of infection fears, etc. So that was how we planned it, and it has been flexible. But what I would say is that we need to be flexible again, because I've worked actually in emergency planning most of my professional life. I used to do things like tsunami response and earthquake response, and working in conflict like Kosovo and Rwanda. And it's always good to set clear objectives, even in the thick of an emergency, to guide what you're trying to do. But you have got to be prepared to revisit them very quickly. And I think now that it seems clear that the first wave has peaked and that the NHS capability hasn't been overwhelmed, I think it's incumbent on healthcare charities like Acorns and St Mary's to say, okay, so it was right for the last month to be part of the effort to create excess capability in the NHS system. But now that capability hasn't been needed, we then have to look again, because obviously we all hope there won't be a second wave at all, but if there does come one, it shouldn't come for some time if they manage the easing of restrictions correctly. So we have to think of how do we re-evolve our service again. So your work planning is never finished. Is that the same for you, Tina?
It is, and I think the one thing, listening to what you're saying, Toby, is because the way that we set this HOBS service up, the hospices are all coming together. We've been planning, we've been developing a plan for about 2 years. So this is across the NHS, hospices, local authority, ambulance service. We've developed a plan across Birmingham and Solihull for palliative and end-of-life care that's been agreed and signed up to by all the major organisations. Now, I think what's happened during that planning phase is the relationships have been strengthened. So as soon as we hit the crisis, a plan that had taken 18 months to come to agreement and fruition literally took about 6 days to implement. Within a fortnight, the whole system, the control centre, if you like, that's staffed by very experienced staff, occupational therapists, nurses, was set up within that fortnight. We went, it was launched on the 6th of April, and it was 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And this is staff changing their working patterns, changing their working practice. And then by the bank holiday weekends, within 5 days, we'd gone 24/7. And that doesn't just happen like that because of a crisis. It's because we've all worked together across different organisations, got used to the idea that we're working as one, so that when crisis hits, you've got that flexibility and goodwill. And it's not, oh, we do this way or we do that way. It's, okay, you do that. How can we make it work together? And those accelerated conversations in crisis are so important. What we want to do now is look at what you're saying is recovery and restoration, so that what are we going to grab from what we've done that we should have, I'm saying we're doing all this. It's like Carly said, we're putting in place system-wide changes we should have done 2 years ago. And it's taken this awful, awful crisis to knock our heads together and get it put in double quick. So we've really got to work out what's it going to look like when we come out of this, because there won't be a normal, it will be a different normal. And that's exactly, I don't know what it'll look like, but I hope HOBS stays, because that collaborative entity is really important, and it's helping people. It's helping us reach more people right now in the middle of the crisis who would be at a loss. And the most traumatic, tragic thing is to be diagnosed with an illness or find you've got nowhere to turn. And there's that one number. Shall I read the number out just in case anybody's listening?
Yeah, and I think, and we can keep repeating that number throughout the call, and we can post it, online for you as well, Tina, and things like that. But go on, repeat the number out for us.
It's really for referrers, because I know there's doctors out there, and it's a happy, healthy Ramadan to everybody that's listening as well, because it is that time of contemplation, isn't it? But it's a number where our own patients can access, and it's also one for referrers, and that's 0121, so a Brummie number, 809 1900.
No significant with the number, it was just that one that was available, or is there a significance?
I tell you what, yes, I was involved in all the strategic planning. I went away to the Caribbean, so the implementation was absolutely zilch to do with me. The clinicians, the back office staff got on and did it, and that's what I'm so proud of. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
I do. History of the Hobbs, maybe because hospices of Birmingham and Solihull, but I think the lead nurse likes hobnobs, so I think that's probably influenced that.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Tina. Thanks, Toby, for leading the question as well. I think for the perspective of us, and just to clarify for the listeners as well, just what government support have we had? So I'm asking two questions. Well, one question with 2 points. What have we had nationally, and what have we had locally? So, Carly, do you want to lead on that for us first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there has been a fair amount of support for the homelessness sector specifically, both from central government and locally. I think in terms of getting people accommodated, Birmingham moved very, very quickly to ensure that all of our rough sleepers had somewhere to stay, and without going into all the technicalities of different criteria and things like that, there are groups of people that ordinarily, without a route to employment, do not get access to any statutory homelessness support. Now, all of those people, because of this public health crisis, have been accommodated. So in that sense, you know, from central government and from local government, it has been very quick, and it has been quite effective. I think that there is still more support that's needed, particularly for the voluntary sector, in terms of direction and guidance. I've got to be honest and say we did feel, in terms of day centres in particular, that the public health guidance that came through was fairly limited, and we did struggle a little bit in the early days to understand exactly and have some really clear guidance on what was happening. And then financially, in terms of sort of business continuity and things like that, our commission services have all been protected, which we were very relieved about, because obviously that gave us some stability in terms of our planning, and we've been able to redeploy and use staff in other ways without being very concerned about what that means for our contracted services as well. So yeah, overall, I do think I think, you know, there's a lot that we could say about messaging from central government, but in terms of mobilisation in Birmingham, I do think there's been a lot of activity, particularly around homelessness.
I think that Birmingham Council Combined Authority have come together quite well locally to deliver support. I think one of the questions that's going to be on everybody's mind is, if we've managed to support majority of all the homeless now, Carly, why can't we do that permanently? Why can't we really help these people who are struggling with homelessness and the complex problems, and just put our arms around them and pick them up as a city and put them and give them somewhere to live? Why can't we do that permanently?
I think that's a really great question, Paul, and I think that's where we are at the moment, and where a lot of our partner organisations are, is we're now having those conversations about, well, what happens next? Because we don't want to see, when all of this is over, that suddenly all those people that we've done some great work with, because we got them indoors during this period, that just ends and they're back to square one. So now is the time for us to be continuing that conversation to say, well, actually, why can't we continue to do this? Because we found this an almost insurmountable task previously, and this experience has told us that it's not insurmountable and it can be done, but it does need resourcing, and it needs resourcing properly, and that's always where we get into the challenging territory, really. So I think there's got to be a commitment long term to saying, actually, we can solve this, but we need to resource it properly.
Let's take that away as a positive, that during these circumstances, unfortunate circumstances, positive is that we have done it, we can do it, and we need to challenge local and national government to ensure that that's the status quo going forward. Toby, just to you, same questions. What support have you had from local government and national government? Are you happy with it? Obviously, you think that things are going to improve. That's the situation we're in. But has there been enough support locally and nationally, do you think?
I think it's a mixed picture for charities, but I think Tina and I would be the first to acknowledge that the hospice sector has been exceptionally well helped. So you'll remember that for the first month after the crisis, there was a lot of we had the furloughing scheme, we had the help for self-employed, and more and more the tempo was being raised on social media about what about charities, what about charities. 2 weeks ago, yesterday, I think, the Chancellor Sunak announced a £700 million package of support with three main areas of earmarking. One, to help specifically smaller charities. So that would be some of the ones that Tim and Lovebrum help. And secondly, to endow one of the National Lottery grant-making bodies with I think a couple of £100 million. And then finally, a dedicated £200 million package for the country's hospices, many of us, let's be honest, would have had to dramatically reduce staff first and then possibly even shut altogether, because in a million years would we have planned for a scenario where all our shops are shut for 3 months, all our events are cancelled, all of our community fundraising is ground to a halt. I mean, you would never have imagined this scenario until it happened. So I feel that national government has been very responsive for charities, although I'm very conscious that there are charities that almost every charity outside of the hospice sector would be looking at the help we've got and be rather saying, well, I wish they'd helped us like that. But what I would say is, from policy perspective, the one regret I have is that I think that I wish the Treasury had found a way to allow charities to furlough staff, but given charities the flexibility perhaps of allowing, say, up to 50% of their workforce to be furloughed, but to re-volunteer for the same charity. Because I think in the end, too many charities have had to choose between financial survival by furloughing staff, and as a result of furloughing staff, because most charities tend to be led, services tend to be led by people. They're not things we give, their care, their support, their mental health counselling, their etc. And I think that when they come to scrub this up, what would it really have cost the Treasury to have allowed charities an exemption to what I understand the scheme as a whole is an important one, that if you were furloughed and claiming your salary back from the government, you shouldn't be working for the company that's furloughing. And I do understand that general point, but I feel that there was the intelligence and the evidence out there to realise that there are ways in which you could have found a way for charities to have furloughed their staff, because we are all legally registered charities, so it's very easy to track who's a charity and who isn't. And then for us to have had, because I know a lot of our staff, we've furloughed a lot of staff, not on the care side, but on the non-care side. They would be desperate to still be working, but in the end, it was a commercial decision that we had to prioritise stemming the financial loss.
I think so. What I'm hearing is that you're reasonably happy for the care sector and for the hospices, for the support from the government, local government, and things like that. Reasonably happy. Could be better. And I'm seeing Tina, who's gonna answer the same question next. However, one of the aspects are the furloughed staff. If you could have a specific exemption for the charitable sector, that might be beneficial for you, for your support, and for the charities, and for the wider, society that you support. And maybe we can take that forward. Now, I know Tina's chomping at a bit to answer this question, but let's go to Tim first. Tim, as an outsider, as a business leader, as well as somebody that's involved in the charity, do you think the government is doing enough at local government level and national level to support charities, specifically the Birmingham charities?
Well, first and foremost, Lovebrum hasn't been supported. We don't qualify for, and that's the same story for my business. Other than the furlough scheme, without the furlough scheme in my business, we wouldn't get through this. We've taken through Lovebrum, we've furloughed just one member of staff. But the biggest issue for Lovebrum, really, in terms of income, and it's not so our charity model, if you like, all our running costs are paid for by sponsorship, corporate sponsorship. So that enables us to promise every single penny that we raise goes through to the causes. Now, of course, every business in the city is suffering financially. So, of course, our patron packages that we sell, our sponsorship packages that we sell, we are struggling with the take-up, and people are struggling to pay as well. So our income has been affected by that. But, of course, we don't really qualify for any of the criteria because we're not actually a service delivery ourselves. The furlough scheme has been a bit of a lifesaver, certainly for Hollywood Monster. In terms of the government, are they doing enough? I think I'm certainly not going to jump on the bandwagon of slating the government, because I think on the whole they've done a very good job. You have to sort of consider, they were fighting Brexit only just before Christmas, and then all of a sudden this has come on top of us. So there wasn't a lot of time to plan for this at all. In terms of how they've gone about supporting businesses, I remember the Chancellor, and I'm not afraid to admit it, I actually cried. He gave out the financial support for the business because it meant that my business may be safe. But there's still a long way that I think that the government needs to support, because there are lots of sectors. Me personally, I'm a director that pays myself through dividend process. I've not had any financial support. Some people say, well, you can afford it, so don't worry about it. But we all know the more you earn, the more you spend, the more commitments you make. But there are still lots of areas that the government need to go. My business, our rate, we pay £75,000 a year in business rates. We don't qualify because we're over the 50,000 threshold, and we're also in a manufacturing sector. That's massive to us. Added that to your rent, that to your standing charges, your car rentals for your staff. It's £150,000 a month overheads for my business, and it's very difficult to see, how the government can help you pay that. So of course we're just hoping that the downturn or the sort of the lockdown is kept as short as possible.
Did an interview with Ian Ward last week, and I think I sent it to you specifically, Tim. And Ian Ward was quite forthcoming, was open and honest that 99% of the businesses, in Birmingham, the SMEs don't really fit into the government portfolio for support. However, Birmingham Council are making specific dispensations to organisations to do that. So, that's quite meaningful. And the next thing we'll do is take some of the points that are raised from this discussion today to Ian Ward to see whether he can offer some support for businesses, charities, alike, and things like that going forward. But now, Tina, over to you. Same question. Do you feel as if we're getting enough support nationally and locally from the government? What do you think?
I think the government's doing what it can. But I think it's important to look at the bigger picture here, because, with adult palliative care, it's a specialism. We're dealing with people who need very specialist treatments. And in Birmingham St Mary's Hospice alone, we would see in 1 year about 1,800 individuals, plus their families, loved ones, partners. And that in itself, the core service that we're providing, palliative care is the only speciality, unlike liver disease, orthopedics, heart disease, it is the only charity where the core service is predominantly dependent upon charitable giving. That is not enough. So that's why I might sound as though, maybe I'm the naysayer here. I think in this crisis, the government is doing what it can within a short period of time. But we've got to remember that whatever support hospices might be given, we are all starting from a very, very low base. And I have been overwhelmed by the support of people like yourselves, Paul, and Tim, the work that the Birmingham citizens are doing to support us. For instance, we're getting people signed up now to the London Marathon's cancelled. We had places in that, so we're going to lose income. But we've got people now, and those out there, join in, please. We're doing what we're calling the 2.6 challenge, where you can either run 2.6 kilometres, you can do 26 miles on a bike, you can run the marathon if you want to. But the fact that people are doing virtual challenges to keep raising us money, because the specialism that we provide to a growing number of people, because the positive thing is we're all going to live longer, but many of us will be living longer with a larger number of conditions. So there is a time bomb. There's another crisis coming in the future where health and social care can't meet the needs of its growing elderly population. So I think it's so important that the government does consider that and look at a proper funding model, not just now, but for the future for hospice care, because too many people are going to fall through the net if we don't get a proper funding. And also, I think it's a brilliant to keep that charitable giving going, because we can still do more with the people that are supporting us through voluntary funding and fundraising.
Brilliant. I think coming back on that, then we're looking at some of the live questions that our viewers are putting up. David Berlin raises the point. Tim raises the issue of money raised for the NHS. No one would begrudge in the slightest the NHS staff and others on the front line deserve all the support they can get at present. But are the panellists concerned that the future increased public fundraising for the NHS might impact upon their charities? That sort of thing. So I think what he's trying to say is that the charitable mindset towards supporting the frontline staff of the NHS, who are doing a fantastic job. Obviously, there's only so much money that people will give being directed towards that. Are we concerned that the monies that would normally come to us through various different activities that each of you raised might not be coming through so readily? Are we concerned? So, Tim, do you want to pick that one up first off?
I don't think we are concerned that people give money to other charities and not us, certainly not. I don't think the NHS is going to take more money from us going forward. I don't think that's the case. Charitable giving, there are trends, there are sort of curves from for different types of charities. Rightly so, the NHS is getting what they're getting at the moment, without a doubt. I think the bigger concern for me is what disposable income people have got going forward. How is this COVID crisis? Is it going to affect jobs? I can't see that it's not going to affect jobs. So people are going to be struggling for money in their own, in their own income. So I would say that is the bigger danger by far. I actually applaud all the charitable giving at the moment, because charity giving is actually quite infectious. Gives you a good feeling, when you're doing work for charity, when you're giving money for charity. It's amazing, how good it does make you feel. So actually, then you're going to give it to another charity as well, So I don't think, for me personally, I don't think that's the drive. That's not an issue. I think the issue is what disposable income people have got going forwards. That is going to be the biggest issue, I think. And that's all related to the economy.
Excellent. So Toby, same question to you. Are you concerned at Acorns about the mindset towards charitable donations? Do you think that's going to decrease, increase? Is it going to focus? Is it going to change?
I agree with Tim actually on almost everything he said. It's very complex that people give so much with their heart. And right now, people's hearts are with the NHS. I don't think, if you work inside the charity sector, then you know that the money that Captain Tim raised, for example, is not needed, if you like, to financially resource the COVID response. And it's not needed to put PPE on the nurses, etc., because there are limitless NHS direct funding for that. But it will be spent in very good ways across the NHS in years to come. And I just think people are. I agree with Tim. If people emotionally, they're just with the NHS at the moment. I do think there's a lesson that charities shouldn't be putting out. Everyone's putting out a kind of, if you don't donate to us now, we'll fold. And we haven't done that as Acorns. Partly because we've had a recent emergency appeal of our own when we were in financial trouble last year and we were appealing to save our Walsall Hospice, but also because I just don't think it would work at the moment. People want something positive to give to, and Captain Tim ticked two massive boxes, in that everyone loved him and loved his courage and loved the fact that he was a veteran and loved his dignity and loved his humility. And then also people loved the fact that he was raising money for the NHS. But I agree with Tim in that overall charitable giving is likely to be much less over the next 2 years than it was in the previous 2 years. I think there will be, I suspect that people might move a bit local. There's some of the charities that I've worked for in the past, Oxfam, Save the Children, Plan, they're all good charities. I think they'll have a really tough time over the next few years, because I think people will be looking much more at their own communities. But, you know, the last time there was, you know, I've been on the other end of this, where in 2004 on Boxing Day, I was emergency director at Save the Children when the tsunami happened. And we thought, we knew it was a big emergency. At that stage, the biggest charity joint appeal had raised 50 million quid, and this one raised 370 million. And I think a lot of you who were already working in local charities, you had a really tough year in 2005 because everybody had given all their money to the tsunami. But it was the emotion. That's where the British public were in 2005. In 2020, right now, they're with the NHS. But I think as long as we give them positive stories to give to, and people understand that their money will have a real impact. The one thing that is absolutely as British as the bad weather and as the Yorkshire tea is the fact that we are very, very, very generous, and charitable giving is in the DNA of people individually, in companies, in philanthropies, in foundations. So charities, of course, will survive, but there will be real turbulence before we reach that point.
Toby, extremely well put. Thank you for that. I think that if we're not talking financial support, what about, you know, physical support, labour support, or your skills and things like that? So Joe Howell, head of careers at BCU, raises a good point. How can university students and graduates, how could they help charities at this time and moving forward? So if we raise that question and ask Carly that, how do you think university students, undergraduates, postgraduates can help now and moving forward? What could they do for you?
I think there's a lot of different ways that university students can get involved and support us at the moment and moving forward. So currently, we are running an emergency appeal. So the way we'd ask students to get involved at the moment would be to do our big Brummie campaign on the 8th of May,
okay.
And get involved in that. But there are other ways as well. I mean, there's things that are non-financial that people can pick up on. So we do still need people to support us around donations of food, non-perishable items, and things like that. In the long term, we always need volunteers to be supporting our services, and particularly where students are concerned, that can be periodic, you know, when they're coming back from universities. But also, if there's a particular area that they're studying, we like to try and make sure that there's a mutual benefit in terms of how people engage with our work. So students can get involved and get some experience of particular services, and also bring a lot of value to our clients that way as well. So there's a whole range of different things that people can do. On our website, people can find out more information as well about what we've got going on. But the other big thing that I would say, and this doesn't just apply to students, I guess, but actually for us, we're a pretty small charity in Birmingham, and we're trying to raise our profile, and just sharing the word and spreading the word and keeping the awareness that we're still out there. I mean, taking on board all the points that were made about the fantastic amount of support there is for the NHS at the moment, but also that we're still here, we're still going, we're still operating and supporting vulnerable people. So, you know, people sharing on their social, helping us with sort of marketing and things like that. We're all a bit Luddite here in terms of social media. So, you know, people getting involved in that way as well is fantastic.
So support with somebody picking up social media for you, taking a message out there, communication would be beneficial for you. Excellent. Tina, what support would you think you could take on board now and moving forward from students, specifically BCU, but I think that's a general question. We've got a few universities in the region. What would you like? What would your ask be at the moment?
Well, we've got very good relationships with the university, and I'm a BCU alumni myself. So at the moment, I think three main areas that Carly's really covered. One being about fundraising. So, check out our charity website, see how you can join in, because students can do things in, imaginative ways and en masse. Also, we've got a number of volunteering initiatives that we're doing online at the moment. For example, we were about to launch our volunteer bereavement hubs out into the community in May. Because of COVID, we were going to suspend that because it's also being done in partnership with Birmingham City Council. They wanted us to continue, and particularly as COVID is creating bereavement, not only because of people, because of death, but because of the change that it creates and the anxiety and the worries. So we will be recruiting volunteer bereavement support workers. We've got a service called Support at Home, that has, that group of volunteers speaks about 13 different languages between them. So universities are really good places for people with multi-language skills. So we are constantly recruiting for that. So at the moment, those volunteers aren't visiting in their own home. But what we're finding is the loneliness that COVID is creating means that our volunteers are probably simply used for a chat about what's happening to them, what they're worried about. And if that chat can be in your own language, it is so much more comforting than trying to interpret or speak across the boundary of language, particularly if we haven't got face-to-face contact. So I certainly think it's worth students contacting us, because volunteering hasn't dried up. And there are a number of our volunteers that will be self-isolating anyway. So, new pools of volunteers are always welcome. And I think what Carly said, I would really like, anybody with sort of marketing or artistic capabilities to even be able to paint the picture of what's happening right now and use those pictures in some of our marketing material. Or even if they want to do a project that is about creating a film, but, sketching and drawing and creating those live images. So there's loads and loads of creativity that students can bring to our work.
I like the idea of that, and some good comments. If we just jump at some of the comments from the audience, which are flying up now. Vicky Rowles makes a point that it would be good to mention pro bono support from businesses, professional people that have skill sets and things like that may come forward doing that. Christine from Woolley from Steps to Work and Starting Point Recruitment. Great point. My stunning son in biomechanical science, desperate to help with unis sticking to syllabus rather than relaxing, allowing them to go out and help final year students and things like that. Would like to help with that. I think jumping on my personal perspective, I had lunch with Philip Plowden probably 12 months ago, and his mindset was that every student that attended BCU would have the opportunity of giving charitable support, and his mindset was that every student would take advantage of that. The next one is from Hannah. You have talked about collaboration being strong at the moment. Do you think that in the future, charities will look to build lasting external partnerships rather than develop new services, particularly if finances are stretched? I think let's pick up on the point about sharing, collaboration and things like that. Tim, would you like to handle that question for us? Collaboration within charities?
Yeah, so in terms of collaboration between charities, or are you talking about collaboration with the wider business community?
No, I think we're going to do both. Let's just have your personal perspective as a business leader and as a charity leader on the collaboration between charities and with businesses. And then I'm going to ask the same question to Toby, but specifically driven from the charitable angle.
Yeah, I think personally, my business I've always supported charities. I think, and there's lots of reasons why. And I think the more people, more business leaders I speak to, when they're wanting to support a charity, for instance, Lovebrum, they all have different requirements. They all have different wants. And I think from certainly from Lovebrum's point of view, we are wanting to build more relationships with the corporate world. We wouldn't exist without the corporate sponsorship, and that's as simple as that. But it's actually interesting what people want as business leaders from a charity. Some just want the promotion. Some want to get their staff engaged. Some want the sort of the feel good factor. There are so many reasons why business deals with and engages with charity. My personal point of view, the reason why I've always done it is because I think it creates a good employer brand locally. I think it makes the business look a nice business to work for. We're a family business, and so charity is very much part of the family values that exist within the business. But of course, that might be very different to the person that runs JLR. And there are so many different reasons why businesses get involved. But I think in terms of collaboration, I actually think this COVID situation in some regard is going to actually help more people get involved in charity. I think charity, the third sector, it's had a rough ride, I think, really, over the last 25, 30 years. And I think probably now there's more desire to help charities than ever before. And I think, I can't remember the point earlier, I think it was Toby, about local. I think, they're saying charity starts at home. And I think very much, the charity should start here in Birmingham before. But of course, that is my personal point of view. Everyone has a pet charity. Everyone has based on their sort of their life experiences. But I think helping and collaboration with charities in the city is that's what Lovebrum's all about.
Yeah, brilliant. And then just picking up on there's a lot of comments coming through on the live stream, all very positive and things like that. But Toby, the question of collaboration of charities, is there going to be more collaboration of charities after this? And what do you think your personal opinion is that's going to look like?
So one of the things that's always said about the charity sector is that we are far behind the curve of the commercial sector when it comes to mergers, takeovers, etc. And therefore, there is an inherent inefficiency of having so many charities all looking to fundraise for core costs, etc. It's not quite as easy as it sounds, but I do think that boards and CEOs and directors of the charity sector can be quite conservative in terms of taking these opportunities. So, it's easy for me to say because there's no other children's hospice in the West Midlands region, and Acorns already is essentially has a lot of the characteristics of a post-merger organisation in a hospice context, because we support 3 very large hospices from a single head office and support structure. But, if I was pulling Tina's leg, and I know there's no one listening, but, perhaps in 3 years' time, will the board look back on the COVID-19 crisis and the joint venture that you've been talking about in terms of sharing staffing resources and etc. Will that be seen as a precursor to having a single Birmingham hospice charity or Greater Birmingham hospice charity, that you're all completely merged? And it certainly would. The conditions are in place for the charity sector to do much more agile merging or back office systems, joint ventures, letting services go, recognizing that things are very different, developing new services, but never underestimate the conservatism in the voluntary sector, if you like, that sometimes it can be a very changed. We can be very inflexible in the best of times, but we can be very conservative and inflexible as institutions as well.
Fabulous answer. Tina, let's talk about Hobbs. Hobbs has been on the go for a while, hasn't it? You've been looking at it for about 18 months or so. And speaking to you earlier, you're saying that during these unprecedented sort of times and situation, it's come together quicker. So what would have taken a considerable amount of time has suddenly been condensed, and the resources have come together quickly. So a little bit of an update about Hobbs. We've already done that, but interesting just the coming together, the collaboration, how that's impacted under the current situation, and your thoughts around collaboration of charities moving forward.
Yeah, so with Hobbs, I think the big thing there is, I'd said, because this has been, it's part of a bigger plan that's been 18 months in the making. And that has been about collaboration across the hospices, ambulance service, the 111 service, and partnership with the NHS. So the fact that it was a sort of concept that everyone was familiar with was really helpful, and the fact that relationships were in place. I think the thing that really accelerated it is everyone involved was focused on one thing, and that was making things better for people affected and making sure we did something quickly. And it was just a simple case of JDI, just do it.
Yeah.
And in a crisis, it sometimes takes a crisis for you to forget the organisational boundaries and just do what needs to be done for the person that isn't getting the help they need right now in this awful, awful crisis. And it's the compassion of all that, the teams involved, that really drove everybody with a shared vision to get something set up quickly to help people. So I think the focus of these charities on the individual was absolutely central to this. Now, what will come out afterwards, I think the board, the leadership team at Birmingham St Mary's Hospice are very forward thinking. So I think we don't use the word merger because I think that's an old world. That's something of the old world. I think you'll see charities coming together with other sectors very, very quickly now. And I think what used to be a merger may look very different now. For instance, Hobbs is very much working with the NHS as well. And we've got staff on the front line working with the NHS on the front line. You also talked about working with businesses. And one thing that's really helped in this crisis was the corporate world. So as well as massively supportive in regards of fundraising, has been the whole debacle about personal protective equipment, and the fact that social media can be used to agitate about that. And I think you were one of the ones that started putting suppliers in front of me, Paul. And actually that meant I've been able to feed those suppliers. Now, we're too small to start ordering 500,000 masks from China, but I've been able to feed that into proper procurement processes, so that there's a better chance of the NHS having a bigger pool of suppliers to draw upon. And that's really the value of collaboration across sectors, like not only the NHS, not only charities, but also with the corporate sector. And I see that type of collaboration being much stronger in the future.
Fantastic. Carly, I'm going to restructure the question slightly. If you had a magic wand after this, what would your collaboration of charities and support look like for your charity?
Oh, wow. Save the most difficult question for me, Paul.
Of course.
I think, in terms of collaboration, I think we were getting there anyway to an extent. I think the magic wand element where we struggle around collaboration is that back office stuff. And I think if we could share more of those back office resources as charities, that would be the bit that would be transformative potentially. I think the point that I would like to make potentially that might be slightly controversial, I don't know, but I think sometimes what happens with collaboration as well is that there is actually, charities are generally very good at collaboration and they do it very well a lot of the time. But sometimes where that part where we need to share resources from a back office point of view can fall apart is also because of commissioning structures and contracts and awards like that, which pitch us against each other and put us into a competitive market, which doesn't feel very natural for us, and we don't really know what to do with that, and we find that quite challenging. And I think we do have a lot to learn from the commercial sector as well. And we've been saying at Sifa for a long time that the commercial sector can give us solutions sometimes a lot more quickly and open doors up for us a lot more quickly than us as the specialists in our own areas. You know, they look at things differently, they do things differently. So again, taking my magic wand, I'd want that commercial sector, public sector, voluntary sector, you know, collaboration to knit together in a much more integrated way than it currently does.
So let's pick up on Vicky's comment about any professional people out there with skills and things like that stepping forward now while they've got the opportunity to support charities, which is good. One of the things that you did mention was the big Brummie camp out. And I think it's hot off the press that you're doing an overnight sleep out. But PJ Ellis has offered to sleep in his potting shed, apparently for 2 weeks, to try and raise a little bit of money. I think I've read it right anyway. So look at some of the other questions. We've had Joe from BCU saying our employability team is fully set up to support volunteers, ready and eager to support. That channel set up there. Jimmy from Bootcamp Media has offered during Ramadan, lots of people are keen to contribute to charities. You know, Jimmy's raising that point. Interesting from Abid. Abby talks about if anybody needs this translated into Urdu or Punjabi, let me know, please. We'll do that. Obviously, all of our languages aren't common. We're a multicultural city. We celebrate that, which is fabulous, but we need to ensure that we communicate to the right level. Okay, quite a hard-hitting question here. Do you expect more charities to close down significantly? Restructure over the next few months? That's quite a tough question, and I'm going to pitch that question to you, Toby. Do you expect more charities to close down or significantly restructure over the next few months? What are your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. In the hospice sector, one of the things that gave urgency to the call for NHS support was the fact that it was known that there were certain hospices who wouldn't have been able to make April payroll. And there are lots of charities in the UK. I mean, the great majority of UK charities are very small. So I think there will be lots of closures, and then the restructuring will happen next, and then perhaps the joint ventures, collaborations, mergers would happen last. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think I'm sure it's the same in the commercial sector. So Tim might, can speak from both perspectives, but there are too many unknowns about how we get through the acute stage of the emergency to make it too valuable to try and plan in too far in detail about what does this mean for the next year or two. But I think I think that all of us need to conserve our energy on helping meet our missions as best we can over this emergency for healthcare charities like Acorns and St Mary's to support the NHS, to be part of this wider emergency effort, and then hopefully to then contribute positively to what kind of society we want to be. Because I just wanted to say one more thing about a question you asked a long time ago about what could BCU students contribute. And I think young people, I think is a really important thing. And we don't own this as the voluntary sector, but we obviously, lots of people with values work in the voluntary sector or support the voluntary sector. It is where people come and express their beliefs by supporting charities or working for charities. And I think there's a big question about, do we want the world to go back to how it was? Polluted, inequitable, no shelter for homeless people to spend the night off the streets. And I think that young, it is important that no one has a bigger role to play in shaping the future of the world than society's younger people. And I personally really hope that some of the idealism and some of the, the pictures and the realization that we can breathe clean airs in our cities and we can see the mountains from the Punjab to the high Himalaya, for the first time in 40 years, etc. It informs that thing about what kind of world we can be.
I think that you're talking about India and you're talking about the distance and seeing the mountains and things like that for the first time is wonderful, Toby. I gave blood this week and went into town for the first time, and there wasn't a piece of litter, there wasn't anybody about, and the sky was blue. Now, actually, the sky was blue because I could see the sky, and it just seemed slightly different, as if everything was cleaner from a personal perspective. Andy Dawson steps in to say, that his company can offer support, leadership, management teams on resilience and things like that. Lots of people are making the point about Ramadan now is the time for giving, to ask for the anything that you need there. We've got PJ Ellis again confirming that he's going to sleep in a potting shed for 2 weeks. Employability UK has set up to help volunteering, would really like to do that. Lots of messages about support coming from that. Jennifer from the LEP is saying, what support can the LEP give us? What would be the ask from the LEP? We'll take that away from here. We'll collate some questions, some asks from the LEP. Tina, the specific questions for you, you've answered those. There's questions around students, something called TikTok. I don't imagine that there's many of the people on the panel understand what TikTok is, but somebody's raising the point about young minds with technology. Can they come up with some good, innovative ideas about how the charities can take on raising things there? Bobby's saying that. Noel, give all the staff that work in our charity and the hospices, panellists and local charities, be proud of them. I think, generally speaking, we've commented about that. We've all passed on comment about our staff, our people that we work with, the volunteers and everything else like that. We've all raised our thanks, particularly to the NHS people. Keith Rizal is saying unique opportunity to negotiate new contracts between businesses, people and society. Let's not waste it. Actually, yeah, good idea. Do we go back to us, to whoever? Should charities be paying any costs? Should we be paying refuse costs? Should we be paying, business rates? Should we have preferable, things like that? Maybe we can challenge Ian Wood representing, the local for that. Interesting to see what the LEP can do for us. A question from Max, Near Star Media. Near Star Media was the guys who put our video together for the firewalk, which completely made me look like a buffoon over that. But hey, it was for charity. If anybody want to dress up as a tiger and walk around in a onesie publicly, that's good for your career attributions. Well, the question from Max is, when lockdown finally gives up, what can charities learn from this? Have we clearly defined what we've learned from this? I don't think we have. I'm going to ask, I'm not going to leave Carly alone. I'm going to ask Tina. Tina, what can we learn from this? What have we learned already? You talked about agility. You talked about collaboration. What else have we learned?
I think we've learned the capacity of human beings to really pull together for each other. It's just been absolutely incredible. We have staff, because our staff are working on the front line with patients who have COVID. We have a number of staff that are going off sick on a regular basis, and then after their period of time, even if they've tested positive, had their period of time in isolation, then they come back again. And we don't know whether you can catch this illness, this virus a second time round. But it's the way that staff, whether front line, back line, working with others, have overcome that fear. If this is a visible killer, because it has killed, we would probably be even more terrified of it. It's invisible, so you don't know where it is. So in a way, that makes it, that I'm contradicting myself, it makes it even more terrifying. But the fact that we have staff and pregnant staff, they've read the guidelines, they've done their own self-risk assessment, right out there in the front line, caring for others, and being prepared, actually not questioning things. The thing that I've really learned is the fact that we've set things up, like Hospice, like education webinars. We did education for 40 GPs last week on having conversations around death, dying and loss. And those GPs now will be able to better have conversations with their patients. We educated more GPs in 1 week than we had done in a whole month. And why we hadn't done that before, I don't know. And I think it's got to be the confidence of ideas to put them into action. And I think we will take away from this an idea, and then we would need to say, okay, how would we break through that idea more quickly? If this is a crisis, what would we do with that idea? Because we have to have a different way. We have broken through social media. We've broken through reaching more people and connecting. We've broken through, and you talk about collaboration. You know, we're breaking through now, looking at how can we share back office staff more now? How can we make more of public giving by bringing together elements of our charities? So we're going to be doing much more of that, and it's looking at how can we take those ideas forward without the complexities that governance and bureaucracy, or I suppose thinking of self rather than service, can get in the way.
Brilliant, brilliant. Toby, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. With your experience about emergency planning and things like that, we've clearly not had the foresight to look at a pandemic around a virus or anything else like that. We've not had enough PPE equipment and everything else like that. So what are we going to learn from this? And as a leader of a nationally recognised charity, what would your advice be to emergency planning, one, and two, to the government about the next pandemic, about the next virus or the flu that's around the corner? What's your advice? Turn your microphone on for us, Toby, please.
There was quite a lot of investment in contingency planning in around 2005, 2006, when they were really desperately worried about avian influenza. It was H2N1, I think, was the influenza strain. And there was pandemic planning that made its way all the way around the world. And funny enough, I read an article just this morning before work from Saturday's FT magazine about why is it that there was a phrase, and it's something to do with our inherent optimism, is that we refuse to believe it. After a few years, we forget thinking that bad things can happen, so we carry on building on floodplains, and people carry on, New Orleans repopulates, and so on and so on. So I think it was just I do think there was a financial element to this. So I think what I understand is that the NHS procedures were quite up to date as regards wargaming for pandemic, but that they hadn't kept the physical stocks of PPE hadn't been replenished as the initial ones had fallen out of date. So there was a simple financial question, although I would say that it is important to recognise that the planning for pandemic planning was all based around it being an influenza, which would have had much less PPE requirements than for a coronavirus, for quite technical reasons. So I think what you'll see is, for the next 10 years, assuming this all ends, let's hope there's an end to this with a vaccine or something in 18 months' time, 2 years' time. Normally what you would expect to see is a big investment for about 10 years, and then everyone forgets about it and it starts to tail off, and then something else might happen, or there might be another pandemic, or there might not be another pandemic. So
okay,
it's the short answer is it's human nature. We plan and prepare for a little bit, and then real life comes along.
Thank you very much for that. Just running through some things, Benjamin, I think that we've pretty much answered your question to that. Keith, thank you for that. John Dooner, happy to give some help and support and things like that. We'll take your details. I'm conscious of the time now that we're rolling on, and I genuinely think with the panel that we've got, we could be talking all afternoon and things like that, adding sort of value into things like that, but we've all, especially you, all would have got day jobs. So just by means of wrapping it up, if we can give each one of you a couple of 3 minutes each for your last message, just put across, whatever it can be, is entirely up to yourselves. But prior to doing that, I just want to thank everybody for the contributions today. I think it's been excellent. The amount of people that we've had viewing, the comments that we've had has been excellent. I think it's definitely been worthwhile. So from me, as chairman of Downtown in Birmingham, me knowing you all personally, it's a thank you massively for that. Tim, do you want to start off with a couple of minutes? Yeah, you've got airtime and an audience just to round up for us, please.
Yeah, really enjoyed being part of the panel, so appreciate that. If you need me to partake in any in the future, please don't hesitate. Yes, in terms of Lovebrum, I don't know if you noticed on social media, I used to be a DJ 25 years ago. Since then, vinyl records have disappeared and come back again. I've been given some decks, and on Saturday night I'm going to do a virtual DJ set, much to the annoyance of my neighbours, no doubt. If anybody wants to join in and join on Facebook Live, please do come along. But on a serious note, anybody that's goes for all the charities really, anybody that feels like during the lockdown period they can raise some money for charities. It's amazing what people and how much people can raise for doing not a lot, other than just the desire and the motivation and the effort to go and raise some money. PJ last week walked on his treadmill for 12 hours, interviewed various different people and got people involved. I think raised nearly £6,000-7,000. So it just shows what can be done. So anybody out there wanting to raise some money for Lovebrum or any of the other charities whilst you're sat at home and locked up, now is to get your thinking cap on and being creative.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. Carly, last few words.
Thank you, and thanks very much. It's been a real privilege actually to be with such wonderful panellists too, so thank you. I would just like to say a couple of things to sum up. The first thing is just what an incredible group of people we share our communities and our society with. Sifa Fireside has faced immense difficulty over the past few weeks, and we have seen from the general public such a huge outpouring of nothing short of big love for what we do and how we carry on. So I just want to take the opportunity to say a massive thanks to that, because this is such a difficult time, and we kind of thought we might get a little bit left by the wayside, and that certainly hasn't happened. People have really got behind us, and we appreciate that so much. And then the second thing I want to do is do a big plug for our Big Brummie camp out, which is on the 8th of May, so 2 weeks away. We're asking people to camp out in their gardens, build a den in their lounge, set something up on your balcony if you're in a flat. It's £5 minimum donation. The resource packs get downloaded when you sign up, which is on our website, sifafireside.co.uk. We've had a huge amount of support from places like the Wilderness, who are doing recipes for us, Sarhole Mill, Millennium Point are doing stargazing packs for us. We've got bunting, we've got posters. It's all happening. There's going to be a Spotify playlist, live stream of comedy. So it will be a fantastic evening. And Jess Phillips is getting behind us as well, and a few other names. So look out for them as they sort of come along. So just a plea, really. It's we're aiming to raise around about £50,000 as part of our emergency campaign. We do have a big income deficit, as I'm sure the other panellists will share. So please just get behind us, and it's sifafireside.co.uk to go and sign up. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you, Carly. Tina, last few words from you.
Okay, you got me wanting to camp out in my garden now, so I'll have a go at that. Yeah, I think it is. It is. Everyone's saying funding is the scary thing. You know, they say cash is king, but that's because it makes a difference to people. We can't furlough our staff because they're out there on the front line. So I would say I'm looking at what the participants are saying, and about Ramadan being the time of giving. So our website is birminghamhospice.org.uk. So if you would like to give to Birmingham St Mary's Hospice, then please do. You're all saying ask and we will give. And so your money will be so well spent on making a difference to people. And very, very grateful during this this holy month as well. It means a lot to have your support and have invitations to ask. And I think it's like Carly said, the support of the public at the moment and our rich, diverse communities it just makes such a difference. You would not know how much it means to us. So what I'll say is to the rest of the panelists, thank you. It's been it really has been a privilege being on the panel with you, and for inviting me to be part of this, Paul. It's been an opportunity to say, don't forget us in this crisis. And a plug for my colleagues in the NHS, because we work so closely with them. Isn't it a shame that it takes a crisis for us to really value NHS and all the key workers across care homes, hospices, anywhere at all? And if something comes out of this, may that valuing of people that are caring for others really be at the forefront of people's minds. So thank you.
Thank you. Toby, over to you. Last few words.
We have an event called the Big Quiz on next Friday, May the 1st, between 7:30 and 9 o'clock. So I've heard a lot about these Zoom drinks meetings that are going on. And if Tim, if you're not spinning your decks, and if Tim, you're not in your garden, or Carly, you're preparing for the sleep out the next week, and I know you'll be free, Paul, because you would have been at an award dinner that's cancelled. It would be really lovely if you folks out here, who are such a representative group, I've had a look through the attendees, if you could sign up and have a bit of fun and get some friends together. It's a 1.5-hour team quiz game in aid of Acorns. But I think, wider speaking, we feel very privileged to be part of the Birmingham and wider West Midlands community. People are incredibly generous and have already shown that to Acorns as to other charities in lots of ways. And it is going to be a marathon and not a sprint, but I think that this has really brought out the best in most of the community. And it's a privilege to see. On a very human level, I'd just like to say thanks a lot. I've seen some names through the participant list of people I haven't spoken to for quite a long time, and seeing them. It's actually really nice to. It's quite lonely, isn't it? Just sat on one screen and writing emails, and it's really nice to see so many of you again. And long may the real end to this. Quickly may it come, and keep well till then, everyone.
Thank you. Just the last few comments from me. So many charities in Birmingham, so many charities in the surrounding area. We're all working hard. It's pleasing to see the collaboration of the charities coming together. That's going out, that's offering support, the mindset that we've had during this lockdown. I think, Tim, just picking up on your one point, that we're actually looking at ourselves now, aren't we? We're spending time with our family and our friends, getting to know people, getting to understand the situation that we're in. We're looking at running our businesses, running our lives virtually via Zoom. Zoom suddenly entered into everybody's life and things like that, looking at virtual opportunities and things like that. And on that point, there are virtual opportunities to support all the charities. We will do something again going forward. There's another incentive. There's a number of incentives that are being created through the city. Invite students to come up with new, innovative ideas to support us. And I just want to say that I have been Paul Cadman. I am still Paul Cadman, Chair of Downtown in Business, involved in all of the charities that are in front of us. It's been an absolute privilege. And I want to thank each and one of you on the panel for taking out your valuable time, and for everybody for tuning in today. This will be recorded and sent out within about a week, maybe an edited version, because for an hour's event, we've gone into almost an hour and a half. So on that point, wishing you all thank you, stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see each other very soon at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.